Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Brode from Deep Knowledge Investing. We provide actionable investment ideas and timely market commentary. We help portfolio managers, individual investors, and family offices get better returns in the equity portion of their portfolios. Today, I'm excited to be talking with Lax Ganapathi from Unicus Research. Lax is an ESG investor. She runs a fascinating independent research firm. And we love her work. We think she's interesting and has a unique point of view. And the reason we want to talk to her today is about electric vehicles. This is obviously a topic where everyone is convinced the future of automotive travel is going to be electric vehicles. Lax has studied the issue in a way that I think most people haven't. And we'd really love to get her point of view. And everyone listening in, you'll be able to hear maybe something a little different from what you've seen on TV and what you've seen in the newspapers. One quick comment before we bring you into the conversation, Lax, for everyone who's listening. The chat function is open. If you have questions, feel free to just ping them in and we'll be ready to go. Lax, thanks for joining us.
Gary, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the introduction. You're absolutely right. There is no doubt everyone is talking about EV, and EV is the future. I think the challenge really comes to the adoption of EV cars.
All right. So the whole world is convinced that adoption is taking place. We're seeing all kinds of statewide and worldwide mandates that, X% of the automotive fleet has to be electric vehicles by 2025, by 2030. There's this expectation that the world is going to change the way it transports itself very, very quickly. I know you're skeptical on that point of view. What do you think the critical challenges are that are holding electric vehicles back?
There are a decent amount of challenges, and I believe that investors and consumers and corporations are very optimistic, and there is nothing wrong in being optimistic. But what's important is when we are moving away from what we are used to something new, it's better to be realistic, and that's our point of view. The challenges are lack of awareness, lack of acceptance, affordability, and reliability. And those are critical challenges from our point of view. We have done a detailed analysis of EV sector from mining all the way to recycling the expired batteries. So lack of awareness is, if I can a little bit elaborate, is a clarity in a lack of clarity in understanding the benefits of EV, and most importantly, lack of understanding in understanding the components of what goes into the EV, and that's where the challenges lies in. So most people, there is a misconception that EVs or means zero emission. That's not true. EVs doesn't mean zero emission. It means it just lowers the emissions over the period of years. Then affordability, we talk about the battery management system. The adaptability, like mass adoption of EV and affordability goes hand in hand, because batteries are, Gary, way too expensive. If you wanted to buy an EV today, 40% of the sticker price that you're seeing comes directly from the battery management system and the components. I would be happy to elaborate if you're more interested to get the nuances of that, but that's the gist.
Yeah, I think you're right. If we're going to talk about electric vehicles, the place to start is going to be battery technology. But before we get there, I just want to make a point of saying I love the point that you're making, which is people refer to electric vehicles as zero emission vehicles.
Yeah.
They are not. They are zero emissions at the tailpipe.
Yes.
But not overall. And they rely on the electric grid.
That's
Yeah, I was reading an article this morning, just sort of giving a sense of what people can expect. And, so we're in the middle of the summer here in the United States, and people run their air conditioner a certain amount. And based on normal driving patterns, the article that I read said people would be using 4 times as much electricity to fuel up their electric vehicles than they use to run their air conditioner, which seems to be an area that people are concerned about for environmental concerns. So the point is, you're right. These are not zero emission vehicles.
No, they are not. And you were right about the power grid, because we have to focus on the grid, and which means we have to talk about infrastructure. We are in so much denial that we are going to be 2025, 2030, but we are not talking about things that will actually drive the change. It's going to be a lot of trade-offs involved, cost involved, and we are not ready in terms of infrastructure. And grid is a very, very good point. And I believe, my memory serves right, only 15 to 20% of the grid is renewable, which means 80% are still fossil fuel. So is EV really environmentally friendly if the grid that it comes from is 80% dependent on fossil fuel? That's the debate here.
Right. Understood. You're making the correct point that we are still burning fossil fuels to make the electric vehicles go. And people, again, they refer to them as zero emission vehicles. They are not. And then the part of the grid, the 15-20% part of the grid that is renewable, is also by definition less reliable, which could be a problem depending on the time of day that you want to fuel up your car.
Yes.
So can you give us a rough estimate, if you look at state mandates, national mandates, by 2030, 8 years from now, what's the expectation for how many electric vehicles we'll have on our highways and roads here in the United States alone?
I can give the statistics, what's out there, but realistically, there are so many research providing different numbers. By 2025, there are some research papers. Very smart people wrote those research papers claiming that it will be all electric. And there are some researchers claiming it won't be there until 2030 or 2035. But let's talk realistically. We have a problem of the batteries being expensive. And the batteries are made of lithium ion. And lithium ion batteries are not technically meant to be for EV cars. They are meant for changing your flashlight battery. They are meant for other utilities, but it's highly dangerous in a way. It has the potential to be overheated. And that is a few of the problems, because a Tesla was parked in a garage, I believe in Texas, and the garage was very hot, and during summer it just caught on fire. So there are a lot of news out there that are linked to lithium ion batteries, and there are a lot of battery evolution that's happening, especially in countries like Japan and China. They are the leading countries in terms of innovation when it comes to batteries. Right now, VW-ID4 in Europe is popular in terms of range, in terms of battery management system. In the United States, everybody believes it's Tesla, but Tesla is not leading the race. It is actually Ford Mustang Mach-E. And in China, it's NIO ES6, and it's Japan Nissan Leaf. To answer your question, what is my estimate? What's our estimate of when we will see a lot of electric cars on the road? I don't know, because I am now going to sit here and just give a number, because we need to address, for mass adoption of electric cars, we need to address batteries. We need to address infrastructure, chip shortages. We need to address cybersecurity threat. We need to address grid. We need to address the minerals, because right now, majority of critical minerals that goes into the batteries are from China, nearly 80 to 90%. So we need to address all of this to see, it's like taking inventory of your financial situation, right? So we take a step back, we see how much we can realistically predict we will have in our bank account. That's similar to this. We need to understand how much cost we need to put up in order to get all these mandatory information, supply chain, everything cleared out, to know when we can realistically talk production.
All right. So, Lex, I want to go and move to talk about what happens with lithium, lithium mining, lithium production, and lithium capacity. Before we do that, I just want to sum up the two key points that I think you've made where expectations are not in line with reality. One is, if we are assuming tens of millions of electric vehicles in the United States, we're going to have a problem when everybody goes to plug them in. The grid is not set for that. And so there's this expectation that we're going to sell lots and lots of electric vehicles, and that's going to make the environment great. Well, terrific. But once people start plugging them in, we do not have that kind of power generation and transmission in place yet. The second problem that I think you've identified is one of these batteries overheating. And I think the thing that some people might be missing is, we've all heard the stories of Teslas that combust or spontaneously combust. The issue, though, isn't just that these cars catch on fire. It's that the fire burns so hot, they're almost impossible to put out. There are situations where the fire department just says, you know what, we're going to let this burn out. We can't put it out. And that's one thing if it's by the side of the road, but it's another thing when these things start combusting in people's home garages, or in apartment buildings, or in parking structures, or in the parking structure of a shopping mall. Not only are they going to damage large amounts of cars around them, but these are places where structures that people are in are going to catch fire. And there are huge safety issues that haven't been addressed yet. And so I give you a ton of credit for pointing that out, because no one else is talking about this in the way that you are right now. It's one of the reasons we respect your firm and your research.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about lithium. Because I'm going to start with my two biggest concerns about lithium. I'd like to hear you address those, and then tell me what we're missing. What else we should be thinking about on lithium?
Sure.
My number one concern on lithium is that there isn't enough lithium mining and production capacity to meet the needs for all the electric vehicles. People think we're going to have tens or hundreds of millions of electric vehicles in the next 10 years. And those battery packs weigh about 1,000 pounds. And I think 40% of that is lithium. So it's 400 pounds of lithium. How much lithium production do we have? Second concern that I have, sorry for overloading you, but I know you can handle it. I know you can handle compound questions. Is I think people are underestimating how toxic lithium mining is. People think electric vehicles are going to be great for the environment, but they're not considering the environmental hazards of mining lithium. And we may just be replacing one problem for another one. What are your thoughts? Are we thinking about this the right way? What do you see? How do you see it?
You're spot on, Gary. Lithium, before I address the first aspect of the question, which is, do we have enough lithium? The question we would be asking is, do we need lithium? And I don't have the numbers on top of my mind, how much lithium we presently have, but you are right in saying we do not have enough mining license. Is that the correct term?
Permitting, maybe.
Permitting, to in the United States, because ironically, environmentalists are against opening lithium mines.
Right.
And this is for the same reason, because you are mining lithium that's not
Oh,
environmentally friendly,
there we go.
and you are using the lithium. So it's not like you take a mineral from under the ground and then put it in the car. There is a huge process. I'm not going to bore you or anybody else with the process. There is a huge process where you have to extract the necessary minerals after you mine lithium, cobalt, magnesium, whatever you're doing it. And you have to grind it to a specific level. And the toxic fumes and toxicity that comes out from these factories, they're not mentioned anywhere. So if you're driving an electric car, you're not adding anything to the green world.
Right. I think that's a key point, that
Yeah.
lithium mining is environmentally toxic. There's a reason why environmentalists are against permitting more lithium mines, but as you pointed out, these are often the same people saying, well, the future is electric cars.
Yeah.
And that'll help the environment. You're correct in saying that may not be so great for the environment, but also for a lot of these people, like, you need to choose. We either need lithium mining or something other than electric cars.
Yeah, it's life as well as in business. It's all about trade-offs.
Right.
We have an all or nothing mentality, and that is going to not help fix the problem. And in countries like Norway, or I believe the name of the company is Freyr. Am I pronouncing right? But the companies in Norway, and there are other companies. There is a company in Japan. They all are innovating new battery technologies, especially, I was planning to talk about it a little later, especially in Japan. They have an alternative to lithium ion. It's called dual carbon. So it's dual carbon is presently considered the, I know we have the solid state battery from QuantumScape.
Yeah.
It's still heavy, it's still expensive, but this dual carbon from Japan is in the race, and it's leading in replacing lithium ion. And Gary, this is a cool technology. What it does is it uses carbon at both the anode and the cathode of the battery. So it offers the energy density comparable to lithium ion over a potential lifetime for a long period of time. And it's safe, and the raw materials are a lot cheaper. And it also charges 20 times faster than traditional lithium ion. And it's also called as a ride-in battery. So it balances the consumer demand. It's scalable, economical, and reliable. They released the first generation, if my memory serves right, August 2021. There is little to no downside to ride-in battery. It also offers, unlike lithium ion, full recyclability, because it's purely carbon. So the real problem with ride-in battery is they are not authorizing it for commercial use in EV cars. They are just selling it to satellite communications, medical devices. Even though there are a lot of requests to them, they are now willing to commercialize. But that's the best thus far, an alternative to lithium ion.
All right. So let me ask you then, because lithium ion, it's environmentally toxic, it's very difficult to dispose of, it's heavy, it's expensive,
Very expensive.
it doesn't have a particularly long life, and takes a long time to charge, right? The new technology addresses all of those issues, right? And being able to charge quickly, have a longer battery life, cheaper, less toxic mining, all of these are huge positives. why is everybody who's coming out with all these new electric vehicles, why is everybody relying on lithium? Who's getting paid here?
Lithium is it's that's a very good question. I might not have like a direct yes or no answer,
All right.
but what I do have is a familiarity, right? Everybody is using it, and it's not that everybody is forced to use lithium ion. It's just investing in a battery management system. It's very, very expensive. And if you go to the QuantumScape financials, you will exactly know they were supposed to um, commercialize the solid state battery, I believe,
Right.
last year. And I don't think they have done it. It's not easy as it is for lithium ion.
Yeah. So the thing with QuantumScape, we did look at their solid state battery technology and actually made money in the stock. That said, I think the issue with them is they've proven that it works small scale. Whether they can get industrial production is unproven,
Yes.
at least as the last time we looked at it. I think the key thing is you have very fast charging times. And then when the battery is spent, you haven't cracked the lithium. And let's talk about the disposal problem, because that's a big one. What a lot of people don't realize is that the rough lifetime of an electric vehicle battery is about 7 years.
Yes.
And at that point, the lithium is basically cracked, and the amount of energy it would take to recycle it is enormous. And so these things end up in landfills. So you're putting a lot of heavy metals into landfills, which is not great for the environment. And the reason this hasn't been a huge problem yet is because right now, the electric fleet, at least in the United States and for the rest of the world, is both young and small, right? So what happens if, say by 2030, we have tens of millions of electric vehicles on the roads? 7 years from then, that's tens of millions of electric vehicle batteries. What are we going to do with them?
Well, that's a great question. Speaking of QuantumScape, yes, in addition to QuantumScape, we also recommended
audio. Oh, wait, Lex, hang on. We lost your audio. Go back 2 sentences. I want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're great now. Keep going.
No, you mentioned about QuantumScape that you invested in it. And in terms of, we recommended Canoe and we recommended ELMS and they both are on their way as a short, and they both are on their way to chapter 11. And they are all have this great concept, and they miss the mark in battery. So you hit the point in that. Recycling the battery is challenging. For instance, if you take Tesla Model S, it's intricate engineering. You have cylindrical cells. The toxic components that comes out is dangerous. But there are ways. So as an investor or anyone, a family officer, whoever wants to invest, it would be better to invest, just a thought, in companies that manufactures batteries for EVs, companies that are taking creative, innovative solutions for recycling. And that would be a long-term return rather than companies with a prototype. So having said that, there are companies, we don't need to wait for 7 to 10 years, Gary, because Tesla started around 2012, 2015. So around 2020, we had tons of batteries. And there are companies, what they are doing is, instead of sending them to landfills, they are putting those batteries in refrigerators, in 7-Eleven, powering the car charging stations, storing energy for homes and grids in Europe. And I took a look at it because I assumed before I researched that after the battery life is over in an EV car, the batteries are pretty much done. It turns out to be not true. So lithium ion, once it serves the life of an EV car, it can still discharge electricity for another 10 years.
Great
And
point.
what's that?
Great point. Basically, we don't necessarily need to recycle
Yeah.
or put these things in landfills. They can be reused for
Yes.
other purposes. You can use them to power up, like you said, refrigerators or homes. Or
Yeah.
one of the most creative things I've seen, I've heard about people using the battery in their Tesla to mine Bitcoin, which I think is hilarious and wonderful.
It is funny and very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is one company in Japan, I think one or two in the entire world. What they do is, which is fascinating, but it's labor and cost intensive, is that they take the old batteries and they try to remove the minerals that goes into the battery, and they resell them to the manufacturers.
Mm. All right. Right now, that's the kind of thing that's expensive, difficult, takes a lot of energy, but maybe 10 years from now, the process will be better.
It will be. Let's hope
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So if I could wave a magic wand and put you in charge of infrastructure, what infrastructure do you think needs to be put in place to make EVs easier to produce and really possible? Because I think the genius of your work is you've looked at this thing that everyone is convinced is the future and said, wait a minute, based on the way things are right now, this isn't going to work. And that's a unique insight. And I think that's remarkable. It's something that we admire about you. It's something I really like. If you were able to address the infrastructure issue and make this possible, how would you do it? Where do we need to invest?
We need to invest in, that's a very great question and a tricky question at the same time, but I'll try my best. We need to invest in infrastructure, and that's a very broad usage. So I will narrow it down. EV charging stations, we need to invest in them. And because there are approximately 100 and, according to Financial Times statistics, 115,000, give or take, gas station in the United States. But right now we have 45,000 EV charging. So we need to get at least 500,000 EV charging stations. We do see them everywhere, but we need to invest more in EV charging stations because to add another 500,000 EV charge, it's going to take at least 60 billion. So at the end of the day, it's not about what we can do. We need to invest in grid. We need to invest in charging station. We need to invest in how we can efficiently transmit and distribute and consume electricity in general. And we need to increase the increase the acceptance of renewable energy, because right now only renewable energy is produced 20%, of which only 12.6% are being used. So we need to have an infrastructure in storing renewable energy, in creating better roads, in creating charging, in creating efficient grid. And it costs money, Gary. It's easy to say we have infrastructure. I hate to get into politics, but this is where it gets into politics, because government and other agencies are driving the EV craze through subsidies and bills, and it's trying to get passed and not passed. But private companies have to pull their load in making this happen. So it's a very, very tricky question, but investing in infrastructure in roads and charging station would be a start, and especially grid.
Yeah, and I agree with you. In general, we like to stay off of politics
Yes.
on this, but one thing I saw this morning that I thought was incredibly insensitive was yesterday there were comments made by this administration
Gary, I lost your audio.
came out and was, I'm paraphrasing, but said that high gas prices were a good thing because it would encourage people to go out and buy electric vehicles. And for people who are just trying to get to work and
Yeah.
where $5 gas is a hardship, it means that it may be hard for them to buy food or hard for them to pay their rent. To have Washington, to have the transportation secretary say, well, go spend $50, $60, $70,000 on a vehicle and this won't be a problem for you, struck me as incredibly insensitive, unkind.
Right.
It just, you're not going to convince anybody that way, but you will make people hate you.
Yeah, that's very insensitive, and you have to think about before going. We are going all green. We are going all EVs. We have to think about our demographics. So Ford has launched a pickup truck. So in the United States, majority of people choose to buy SUV or pickup trucks.
Right.
And when you talk about pickup trucks, that's a specific set of demographics you're addressing to. To cater to them, you need to make sure that the pickup truck is capable of pulling a load without losing the amount of electric charge in that requires to pull that heavy weight. So they're not the people who are using pickup truck for agriculture or any kind of purpose, right?
Right.
The electric vehicle need to serve the purpose. You just can't. So there are a lot of complicated things that need to get straightened out, so we can have a mass adoption of EV cars.
Yeah, Lax, I'm completely with you. A few weeks ago, one of the other members of the Deep Knowledge Investing Board of Advisors and I ended up in a bit of a debate on Twitter where we were talking about, lack of availability of diesel and how that was a problem. And somebody who hadn't really thought it through chimed in that, oh, this is wonderful, and it'll push people to buy electric cars. And, our response was, you need diesel for farming. Without diesel, you're not going to have tractors, combines, or the ability to truck food to markets. Without diesel, people will starve. And, you run into huge problems when you try to use electric batteries, which can produce enormous amounts of torque, but they drain quickly.
Yes.
And so what do you do if you're trying to bring in a harvest and your battery runs out halfway through the day? Because you need huge amounts of torque to tow farming equipment. That becomes essentially a civilizational problem because then people don't have food.
And that's the thing. It's interesting you mentioned agriculture, because I was called to speak on ESG recently, and the question was more like, "Oh, what do you think of ESG? What do we think we need to do?" I said, so you're pretty much asking to solve the societal problems. So when EVs are like technically under the realm of ESG, you have, it's not only environmental. You have to focus about social, which is, you mentioned about the agriculture. You wanted EV tractors. I mean, where is this going to go? So it's we are opening a lot of discussions. So EV in its entirety is not a simple task of let's be all EV by 2025 or 2030.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, Lax, we're going to hit the lightning round. Last two questions, quick ones. Ready?
Sure.
Question 1 out of 2. What's the price point manufacturers have to reach for EVs to become mainstream?
They have to focus on the battery. There is no specific price point. It has to come to a level of what the current combustible engine cars cost. The banks should be able to finance it, right? So it has to be in the range of anywhere between 25 to 35 or 40 maximum, which means we are talking about bringing in banks who can able to finance the EVs. And that brings another question as insurance. That brings another question of liability. So price points needs to be way lower, and that will happen only when the batteries reach to a certain point.
Yeah, and I think a key thing is it's not just getting to lower prices, it's lower prices with a battery pack that's large enough so that people have enough range.
Yeah.
Right? You could make it cheap by cutting the battery in half and having, 100 miles of range, but that might not be that might not sell either.
It's not. And one quick point is like it's pretty cool. China has introduced China's Neo EV car has introduced facilities all over cities in China where they can swap the battery. So your car backs in to a small garage.
Yeah.
From underneath, the old battery is removed and the new battery is fixed.
Yeah, it's the 2022 version of Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
Right?
2022 version, spot on.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
All right, last question for you.
Yeah.
If you could have any EV model in the world, what would be your pick? What would you put in your garage?
Ford Mustang Mach 3. It's pretty cool. It's actually better than Tesla.
I like the call. I'm a high horsepower, high torque person myself.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. That's a great call. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the F-150 Lightning.
Yeah.
That could also be a lot of fun as well, assuming they can tow. All right. So everyone, this has been fascinating, Lax. So great to get your point of view. The thing I like about you and your work more than anything else is that you have a unique, differentiated, independent point of view. You're not reiterating the same stuff that we see everywhere else. To me, anyone who can look at the world, the same world everyone else sees, and come to a different conclusion is a fascinating person. So thank you so much for sharing your point of view with us today. Let me ask you, for the people who are listening in and want to know more about you, about Unicus, about the work you're doing, how do they find you? Where do they go?
Well, thank you so much, Gary. Thanks for having me. They can go to unicusresearch.com, UNICUS research.com. And we also have a Substack at contrarianunicus.substack.com, where we post day-to-day insightful views from our team.
All right. And for anyone who wants a personal endorsement, I actually am a subscriber to one of Unicus's Substacks. So I see the stuff that they're working on as well, and I always read it. Lax, thank you so much for your time, for your great point of view, and for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thanks very much.
All right. So long.
So long. Bye.